Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Some technical difficulties there. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. This is NHP UK Press Office YouTube channel. Steve Laws is on his way. Just bear with us a couple of minutes. So this is a live stream with myself and Steve Laws. We're going to be discussing the people coming across the channel, and Steve likes to call them illegals, and we're going to discuss what they should be referred to. And this is one of the big policies of our party. We're called the National Housing Party, mainly because there's over 1 million people waiting for council flats in this country, and these people are flooding across the channel. As we all know, have been given council flats before our own people. So, this is a big issue for our party. Our policy for this crisis at Dover is to exit the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. Many of you will know that we've been campaigning for that even before we got the party registered. We're a new party. We're only like 3 months old. We're working on the website. Getting a website going, and got a few members who've joined already. Myself and John.lawrence are the two people who set the party up, and we're just waiting for Steve Laws to log on now, and it shouldn't be long. And so as I said, that is one of our main policies, to exit the United Nations Refugee Convention and complete halt to permanent settlement immigration. In other words, we want to make it against the law to give out any further UK passports to foreigners who are coming into our country. Obviously, tourist visas, student visas, with strict rules that they will definitely be leaving after the work they've done or the studies they've done. And it's a massive crisis now, immigration. Everybody knows it. I don't like the term mass immigration. I feel that if you say you're against mass immigration, you're okay with a little bit of permanent settlement immigration. I'm not happy with any permanent settlement immigration. I want it stopped. And in my opinion, the day we make a law to stop giving out UK passports is the day we will regain our country. And so just waiting for Steve still. Hello to everyone in the chat. Shout out to John.lawrence, the leader of NHP UK. Right, we've got Steve Laws coming in now. Here he is.
Hello, mate. You right?
All right,
sorry,
Steve.
Mate. I've got a bit of a nightmare with my camera at the moment. Bear with me a second. It won't bloody stay still.
No problem.
Eric, hold up. No, hold up. Fuck's sake. Sorry, mate.
That's all right. I messed up the stream before anyway, Steve. That's all right, mate.
Look, my head's all over, but I ain't ready at all. But yeah, I'll go for it. Let's go. Are we live,
Yes.
Are we?
Yeah, it's live.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry,
and,
mate.
welcome along, Steve Laws. Steve Laws is probably the most important reporter at Dover, along with Active Patriot and Little Veteran. These people are bringing people the facts, what the mainstream media won't tell the public, and they've been doing it for like maybe 3 years now, maybe longer. I'm not sure. Steve will let us know later on. But just to let everyone know, me and Steve are on the same side, and it's true to say that me and Steve we don't want any of these people coming into our country coming across on these boats. We don't want any legal immigration coming in, settling permanently. We don't want illegals coming in, and we don't want refugees coming in, settling permanently. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Oh, yeah, we don't want any of them.
So, me and Steve are on the same page on that, definitely. This stream is just a debate on how we deliver the message to the public. And everyone who watches Steve a lot will know Steve likes to call the people coming across the channel illegal immigrants. And some people who know me, I prefer to highlight that we need to leave the Refugee Convention because that is the way they're getting in, which, in my opinion, is not breaking the law because we're signed up to the Refugee Conventions. So what I'll do, Steve, I'll hand it over to you, and if you want to give us a little rundown of why you've decided to continue calling them illegals and to statistics of the last couple of years, if you can remember.
All right, yeah, no worries, mate. Right, so I'll start on the statistics, right? So 2018, we had 299 illegal immigrants arrive, but this is just by boat. This isn't the people that have overstayed their visa or come in by lorries or aeroplanes or any other route, right? And then in 2019, we had 1,843. 2020, it was 8,466. 2021, 28,526. So you can see the jump in figures that's climbing up. This year, we've had 18,284 illegal immigrants arriving by boat, not including the ones that came over today. We also forgot to mention Chris Johnson in one of the people that reports on this. We've got to give a shout to Chris. He's been doing it longer than any of us, so it'd be wrong to leave him out on that.
Yeah.
But last month, we had 3,683 illegal immigrants arrive by boat. The month before that, it was 3,139. This month, we're already roughly around 1,800 that came over this month. So the numbers, as you can see, they're climbing rapidly. August and September leading into November are going to be the busiest times of the year. And the reason I call them illegal immigrants is because they are illegal. By all definitions, they're illegal. They shouldn't be here. They've got no right to be here. No legislation legally says that they are legal immigrants. So you can, that's where I stand on it. I know where people come at it and they try and say Article 31 of the Refugee Convention states that they are legal, but that's not actually statute law in UK law. It's just guidelines. So that's why I call them illegal immigrants, because by all definitions, and both the government themselves, that's what they are. If you ask anyone in official government what they are, they're illegal immigrants. The only reason the term migrants used or refugee is because it's more media friendly.
Right. So basically, Nigel Farage calls them illegals as well, but Nigel Farage is not like you, Steve. Yeah, and
I know you.
Right, it's fair to say, if you don't mind me saying, you are a proper nationalist, yeah, because you don't think people who are not British should have British passports. The same as what I think, yeah.
Yeah, nah. British people
British passports.
Well,
at least not anymore. You know what I mean? We just stay on that one. So Nigel Farage says that, in my opinion, the reason he continually calls them illegals is because he also continually says that we must accept refugees, and that in my opinion, that's why he does it in when he's in the channel and he's talking about the channel. And my opinion is that the root cause of it, the reason they are coming across the channel, there's no other reason, is because of the Refugee Convention, and because they know that when they hit the shores of Dover, they claim asylum and they cannot be treated as criminals. It's a worldwide thing that many nations have signed up to, and it all leads back to the World War II, which I don't want to go into, but that's where it all leads back to, and that's why they're coming across the channel, and that's why we have a problem there, is because of the Refugee Convention. Would you agree with that?
Well, partly. The reason they're coming across the channel is because it's tougher to come over by lorry now. That's the reason they're coming over over the channel. But the reason they're coming to the UK is because Tony Blair, for instance, he pretty much put into law, well, not into law, it was more an assistance. If you was going through the court of law, for a court, it was more of a reference point for judges to use in cases to do with asylum and refugee claims. So ultimately what they would do is they'd use Article 31, but it was more of a copyright of Article 31 from the Refugee Convention, where they put it into law stating that, but it's not official law, it's not actual statute law where it's passed legislation to be where you can actually use it. It's just whether they want to use it or not. What they've done is they've put it through, so anyone who comes into the UK, no matter what, they can't be treated as a criminal, and they must be protected and given certain human rights when they arrive, no matter what, no matter the circumstances. So if they come across the channel illegally and they say, I've been persecuted, blah, 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 I want to claim asylum. Now the government stick by that legislation that sort of is legislation and sort of isn't. It's like a grey area in between where there's no legal binding, where if a judge wants to rule it out and completely ignore it, they'd be within their rights to do it. But if a judge wanted to stand by those and use it in the court of law, they'd be in their right to do it. It's such a grey area that no one really knows where they stand with it. But the reason they've done that is so anyone who comes over, they get treated. That's why they're all in hotels. That's why they're all fed. That's why they're all given clothes. That's why they're getting mobile phones. That's why they're getting put into council houses, etc. Because everyone's listening to the law. But the thing is, international law is nothing more than guidelines. Nothing happens if you don't listen to the law. Like it's whether people like to admit it or not, international law is irrelevant. It's Mickey Mouse laws. It's the equivalent of you saying, I don't want to smoke in my house. There's a smoking ban in my house. And then you have a fag in your house. Who's going to tell you off for it?
Well, I would disagree with that. But as I said before, it all leads back to the Second World War. And the reason...
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
The reason it was created is because of what allegedly happened or did happen or didn't happen in the Second World War to a certain group of people. And countries didn't want to take them. Countries didn't want to take refugees because they know it will end up destroying your country, and it's exactly what's happening to our country now. So that's the reason it was created, and it's almost like a religion now. Because of that, it all leads back to that, and you know, it's almost like a war crime if you don't follow the rules of it. And I would strongly disagree that it is just a bit of paper you can ignore. If you might be able to do that if you're a tiny little country and you're not on the Security Council of the United Nations, but countries like France, UK, America, these countries.
America ignore it at least once a week.
Well, I would disagree with that. They're getting thousands and thousands flooding across the Mexico border. And
but they're choosy about who they get. If they want to get rid of someone, they can do it just like that. Right, whereas we make it difficult.
Yeah, so these people, when they turn up, they get on a boat and they turn up at Dover. Let's just do a scenario, yeah?
Yeah, go on.
And they don't speak English, right? They turn up and they just keep saying asylum, right? Because we're signed up to this refugee convention, we cannot treat them as criminals. You're not allowed to. It's written within the convention that you cannot treat them as criminals, right? So, for one, you can't prove what country they just came from. It could be Holland, it could be Belgium, it could be France. And those countries are never going to take them back. Not only that, right? Every year, all the major countries have got an agreement that they take a certain quota of refugees from around the world. Like, for example, when the Vietnam War was on, we took loads of Vietnamese. And that's not a bordering country to a country. My thing is, I want to leave this convention. I don't want to take any of them. And unless we leave it, these people are never going to stop coming across the channel. And when they do stop it, because like you said before, they stopped the lorries and then the smugglers moved to a different thing, which was already happening. Because I remember these dinghies were coming across about 6 years ago. I've been on this since 2016. I've been campaigning to leave the refugee convention. So what the debate is you're saying that they're illegals, and I'm saying that that the government are not treating them as illegals because they're not allowed to because of all these refugee conventions we're signed up to. And as a party, the National Housing Party, United Kingdom, there's 3 conventions we want to leave. The ECHR, which Nigel Farage keeps going on about. And he keeps going on about that to deflect because he won't talk about refugees. And the root cause of the whole thing is accepting refugees. Would you agree that is the root cause of it?
I would disagree that it's the root cause of it because there's other factors that come into it. Even if we left the refugee convention tomorrow, they'd still come.
Yes, but then they could be treated as criminals because
they could be treated as criminals, but it's down to the government that you have in power and how they interpret the law. For instance, we could come into power tomorrow, so just as a scenario, we could come into power tomorrow, interpret the law completely differently, and we could stop this overnight.
Well, this is why we started the party, is because we want to, like, it's highly unlikely we're going to get into power, but we want to get enough support to force the parties who are in power to leave the refugee convention. And our strategy would be to leave the refugee convention, and then anybody turning up on the beach is going to be an illegal immigrant, and they're going to get a 3-year prison sentence.
Well, this is the thing. But people, sorry to interrupt, mate. The thing, people always assume that they're turning up on beaches. Very rare. Only one or two beach landings that we know of have happened this year. They're being ferried in. They're being picked up as soon as they get to our waters, which is exactly the same as landing on a beach. It doesn't make any difference. But to say also, like going back on the lorries, they haven't stopped either. 14,000 came by lorry that we know about last year. And obviously, that's very difficult to get an exact figure on because, as you know, a lorry could stop absolutely anywhere in the country and let them out, as they have done before.
So there's estimated 2 million illegal immigrants in the UK. Would you agree with that?
I'd probably say it's higher, to be honest with you.
Possibly, right? So, I mean, I don't know if you've read our policy on this, but our website's coming soon, and it will be on our. I think you have read something of what we did, and our suggestion is we need to build thousands of detention centres to deal with this problem because we've got over 2 million illegal immigrants, and there's no deterrent. Deportation is not a deterrent. We've had the Albanian murderer who came in 3 times illegally. We've had the Afghan who came in 3 times illegally, and he just got a 10-year, 14-year sentence for attacking women with a hammer, trying to chat them up on Regent Street, and they was rejecting him, and he was attacking them with a hammer. He had been deported twice and came back 3 times. So it's a massive problem, and people like Boris Johnson keep saying, "Oh, we're going to give him an amnesty." When he was mayor of London, he said he wanted to give the estimated 1 million illegal immigrants in London an amnesty and give them British citizenship, which I'm completely against. I don't want to give none of them. I want to get rid of them all, right? But the reason people like Boris say these things is because they know it's such a massive problem that they cannot deport them. Because if someone refuses to give you their identity, the only thing you can do is either execute them or put them in detention. Our policy is to put them in detention until they agree to leave the country. But Boris Johnson knows that a Liberal government are never going to do that, and that's why the problem's so big. He knows that they're never going to put them all in prison. So he thinks the best way to do is get them legalised, and then we can get taxes off them. That's their Liberal solution, which none of us want.
Here's the thing: he already has given them amnesty. When the COVID jabs came about, he offered 1 million illegal immigrants to go to their GP, no questions asked. They'll be given the COVID jab, and it's basically a backdoor amnesty without people realising. So
I don't think he was. I know he wants to give him amnesty for citizenship before, but I think that particular incident was. He said there'd be no questions asked, just get the jab. That's what that was all about.
That's basically a backdoor amnesty though, because they're registering with a GP at the same time.
Right. So our policy is 3-year prison sentence, and what we would do, we'd set a date, say for like 6 months' time, and we'll say, right, anybody who's illegal in this country, you have a chance to get an amnesty of the 3-year sentence. Not an amnesty to become a UK citizen, that's off the table. An amnesty from a 3-year prison sentence. You go to a port or an airport, you give your fingerprints, photograph, and DNA. And if you haven't committed a serious crime, you're allowed to leave and you'll be banned for life. If you're caught again coming in, 3-year prison sentence. And all
Personally, I think the 3-year prison sentence isn't a good idea. The prisons are pretty much full up already, and it's expensive to keep a prisoner, especially for 3 years per person. And if we've got 2 million of them going into prisons, that's expensive. The reality is you should just deport them straight away, no questions asked. And those that arrive should be pushed back at sea. If they arrive on a lorry, they should be picked up, taken straight back on a ferry, taken back to France. Everyone who turns up should be assumed that they're French. That's how I would interpret the law. Assume they're French, they came from France. That's how I would do it. Treat everyone as if they're French, take them straight back to France, no questions asked, no if, buts or maybes, just do it. The French will kick off, they'll make a massive fuss about it, but eventually they're tighten their borders at the other end, and the problem will eventually exacerbate all through Europe because no one will want them, and that's what will happen. But if we keep bending over backwards for the French, we'll never ever get rid of these. This has been going on long since I was a child. I live on the coast. I've seen it since I was a kid. When I was about 11 years old, and we used to go down the front, and we used to go down the hotel bus and pissing about as kids. Top 2 floors were full up with illegal immigrants then, and that's going back 20 years ago.
Yeah. But Steve, what you've got to understand is you cannot deport someone if the person doesn't give their identity. A country is never going to.
That's where you interpretate them as French. because they came from France. If they won't give you their identity, then you just say they're French.
But you can't just get an helicopter and start dumping people. It's just never going to happen. Things like that.
No, you can take them back by boat.
It's unrealistic, because the only way you can deport someone officially is if they agree to give you their real identity, and then the country says, okay, yeah, we know that person is, we'll take them back. And that is the problem. What I'm trying to explain to you with Boris Johnson.
No, but I get where you're coming from. But the thing with that is, these nations don't want them back. They won't take them back. We've tried that before. Pakistan was told to take back half of their some of the grooming gang members and stuff like that. They refused. They outright refused. And because our government's cowardly, they didn't turn around and go, okay, well, we're going to ban any of you from ever getting a visa. None of you can visit our nation, etc., which you should do. The reality is.
All right, so say you've got 1,000 people. They've come on the boats to Dover, yeah, and then they've turned up, and you're saying just take them back to France. But
outright take them back to France. You've got to be tough. You've got to be tough as a nation. What do you think they do in Greece? What do you think they do in Turkey when they arrive there? What do you think they do in Australia? What do you think they do in China?
In Greece, they're flooded with them.
They're pushing back at sea. They're pushing back at sea and taking them back to the Turkish islands. I've seen footage of it. Obviously, they're not stopping them en masse because they haven't got the power to do so. But the reality is, if you do that, it's effective. I know it's not pretty. I know it's not the ideal solution, but that's how you do it.
But if you haven't got a deterrent, what's stopping them just keep coming back, Steve?
That is a deterrent. The minute you arrive, you get pushed back and you're deported from the country. Any minute they're allowed on land, that is not a deterrent. If you put them into hotels, you put them into prisons, you put them anywhere in this country, that's not a deterrent because they're here. They've got what they want. They came here.
There was the Albanian murderer. He got deported 3 times and he came back in 3 times.
Yeah, because we're not pushing them back at the moment. We're picking them up from the middle of the channel.
He was getting deported.
Yeah, even getting deported. Yeah, but this is my point. They're getting deported. The odd foreign criminals getting deported, but we're not pushing back when they arrive again. We're just letting them come in.
Steve, it's not a deterrent.
100%. I disagree with you on that. 100%. It is 100% a deterrent. If you're trying to get into somewhere and they said you can't come, that's a deterrent.
No, but the Afghan, he's been deported 3 times. He came back and he's putting hammers into women's heads on Regent Street. He's been deported 3 times. That's not a deterrent.
Yeah, what you're not understanding is the deterrent is stopping them coming when they try to come back. You deport them and then you push them back. That's where you're going. That's what you're not understanding. Say they come by lorry. Like, let's just use an example. They come by lorry and we find them in the port of Dover or a Liverpool port or whatever you want to say. You put them straight into the back of an immigration van. You put them straight on a ferry. You take them back to France or you fly them back to Afghanistan. And then if they can come over by boat, you push them back in the middle of the channel. You say, you're not coming into our waters. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. We don't care if you've got kids. We don't care if you chuck yourself in the water. You're not coming in. And then that is a deterrent.
Yeah, but they get in with fake passports and all sorts, like you said earlier.
Yeah, no, that's obviously that's down to
what is going to dissuade people from doing that?
Well, that's where you've got to be tougher on the whole visa system, and you've got to be tougher with stop giving everyone a British passport. There's domino effects that you have to do. You have to take baby steps. So at first you push back, and then you start deporting people as soon as they arrive. And then if they come by a dodgy visa, then you do that, and then you stop giving out British passports. It's like a 10, 20, 30-year period where you've got to use the domino and snowball effect to get to where we want to be. We can't do it all in one go. So you have to do baby steps to get there. And until we start the baby steps, we'll never get there.
Well, at the moment, they cannot deport anyone. They've got to give them a refugee hearing, haven't they?
But this is where you interpret. That's where you can put it down to the interpretation of, I completely disregard this international law. It's not British law. We didn't write it. We don't agree with it. We're out.
But they do. The government signed up to it. The establishment
I signed up to a water bill. I change water companies whenever I want.
Yeah, but they're not changing it, are they? There isn't another refugee convention. That's only the United Nations one.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. It doesn't mean you've got to be a part of it. Just because it's United Nations, don't mean you've got to agree with it.
This is the whole point. I've got into this politics to change that. I want to leave the refugee convention.
Yeah, I agree. We should leave the refugee convention, but at the same time, the easiest route is just a campaign to ignore it. It's quicker, it's easier, it's more efficient.
But they're not going to ignore it until we get them out of power. That's the reality. And anyone
I agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Anyone who turns up, they claim asylum and they're obligated to give them a hearing. If they fail the hearing, then they become illegal if they abscond.
But they're illegal as soon as they arrive until they claim asylum. That's the fact. And then it comes into this grey area whether they're legal or not. But in my opinion, none of them are legal, and they never will be, no matter what legislation international law tries to push in our face. They will never be legal in this country. They're illegal immigrants. They shouldn't be here, and they should be deported.
But they're claiming asylum, and they know that they can't be
asylum to me is an absolute load of nonsense. It's not what it was designed to be. The legislation was written for people displaced in genuine wars, like when World War II was happening and literal cities were destroyed, fucking whole regions were destroyed. That was what the whole asylum process was designed for. Now people are exploiting it, saying, "Oh, I can't go there because I'm gay," or "I can't go there because I've had a tattoo." And that's do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So any person in the Muslim world, if they can get to a beach on our coast and say that they're gay and they're going to be persecuted if they go back, they're going to get asylum because we're signed up to this thing. Our stupid government are going to carry on doing this until we get them out of power, and that's the reality.
But here's the thing. I agree with that. We need to get them out of power, but once we've got them out of power, we can completely disregard all of these international treaties and act as if they're not even there. That's what we can do. That's what happens in the Eastern European nations. It's completely exactly what happens. Like, we've just taken 100,000 Ukrainians. Why aren't they in Poland? Why aren't they in Hungary? Why aren't they in Moldova? Why are they not in Slovakia? Why are they here? That's miles away from it.
There's not even a war
in between.
There's not even a war in Western Ukraine.
This is my point. And the whole thing with when you flee your nation, you're meant to flee your nation if there's no safe areas in your nation. So say a war broke out in England and Scotland was safe, everyone should be going to Scotland, not France and Germany and Russia and all the way over to the other end of the country.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is that the reason they're coming across is because of the Refugee Convention. They know it. They know that they're not going to be treated as criminals because they're not being treated as criminals. They're being put in hotels. They're being fed. They're being sheltered. And this is all because of the Refugee Convention. And I think it's better to inform the public that this is what is happening and we need to change it and get rid of it and get these people out of power. That's the only way we're going to be able to change it. Because going back to Nigel Farage, he keeps on saying, "Oh, we must take genuine refugees." On my Twitter, there's a video of him saying we can take in 25,000 Syrian refugees a year, no problem, on top of what we even take anyway. We want the Australian system, and the Australian system are accepting 20,000 refugees a year. We don't want that. We don't want any.
I agree. We don't want any of them. That's why we should completely disregard these international treaties. I get what you're saying. You've campaigned to get rid of it, and it's quite a noble cause. I do agree. But if I was in power, I wouldn't even bother leaving it. I'd just completely disregard it. I'd act as if it didn't exist.
That's what we want to do, Steve. That's exactly what we want to do. But we've got to face the facts at the moment that the reason they're flooding across, and like you said in your statistics, it was 28,000 last year. This year's predicted to be 60,000 plus. And that's 60,000 plus council houses they're going to be given before our own people. We all know that's what's going on.
It's not just 60,000. You want to times that by 10.
Right. But the reason they're flooding across is because they cannot be treated as criminals, Steve. That is the reality. And
yeah, but this is where we disagree on, because we could disregard that law right now and treat them as criminals all that we want.
Because
who's going to stop us? If, say, the government turn around tomorrow and say we're treating them as criminals, who's going to stop them?
Yeah, but they're all woke. The government's woke. It's
but I'm just saying, as a scenario, say Liz Truss comes into power tomorrow, right? And she turns around and says, I'm turning them all into criminals. The Conservatives vote in and say, yep, we're absolutely fine with that. Who's going to stop them?
I would be celebrating. No one. I would be celebrating if they did that, Steve. But that's not. That's
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, though. That can be done overnight. We don't have to leave these legislation.
The Lib Lab Con are never going to do that, Steve. You know they're never going to do that.
Yeah, that's why you've got a campaign to get the parties out.
Right, but the problem is there's certain people like Nigel Farage who keep saying that they want to accept refugees, and this is.
Yeah, but I can't do anything about Farage, can I? He's his own man.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that is the root of the problem, accepting refugees. The reason they're massing on the border in France to come here is because they're using a refugee convention to get in. And we've got to educate the public. That is what is happening.
It's not just that, though. You think the amount of illegal immigrants that have absconded, they don't want the protection of asylum. They just want to come here because they can make an absolute fortune, whether it's through prostitution, drugs, trafficking. or whatever reasons they come up with, that all of that, these people are still going to come no matter what. That's why you've also, without leaving these legislation, whether you leave it or disregard it is irrelevant, they're both the same outcome. But once you've done that, that still won't stop the problem. You have to be cruel to be kind. You've got to push them back. You've got to deport them. You've got to be really hard on immigration. The only way to stop it, and like to stop an invasion, is to be cruel to be kind.
But Steve, you need to punish them, and you're not by deporting them. You're not punishing them, mate.
I don't need to punish them. I just want them out of our country. I don't care what they do. Just get them out of our country.
Keep coming back.
No, they're not. Not once you start pushing them back and stuff, and you realise there's no way into the country.
I've just gave you 2 examples.
Putting them in prison is too much money for the taxpayer. It's an absolute shambles. We're already paying $5 million a day for hotels, 1.5 million a year on coaches. 350 grand they spent last year just on bloody pizzas at the port. Like, this is too much money for taxpayers.
I gave you 2 examples of 2 serious criminals who've been deported 3 times.
Yeah, you provided the reasons that they've been deported, but there's no deterrent stopping them coming back in. This is my point. If you deport them and put the deterrent in place to stop them coming in, that solves that solution.
Well, but there's passport checks, and they're using fake passports and that. And if they would have got a prison sentence the first time, they might not have come back for the second and third time.
No, they won't be bothered about prison. You put them in prison, they meet other criminals, they find other ways to make more money, and all they're doing is networking. It's ridiculous. It's the same as putting them in a hotel. Like, prison's not really a punishment these days. I've had mates that have gone in and out of prison. They absolutely love it. They make a fortune when they're in prison.
If I knew I could go to Brazil and go in there, overstay my visa, which you can, right, and not get any punishment if they find me and they're just going to tell me to leave the country, what's to stop me just keep going back there? And
them pushing you back before you get into the country.
Well, you
try and get into Poland, they'll push you back. They'll stop you coming in.
Well, I'm sure in Poland that they got tough prison sentences for people doing that.
Yeah, but they don't put them in prison. They just deport them because it's too expensive for the country. That's what you got to understand. If we've got 2 million illegal immigrants, let's just say a round figure of 2 million illegal immigrants in this country, right? And then what you've got to think is it costs on average something like 75 grand a year to keep a prisoner in prison for a year, right? So you times that by 2 million, that is an awful lot of money that a taxpayer's got a burden, and you want to put them in prison for 3 years. That's an awful lot of money.
No, but I did say we'd have an amnesty and they would leave. A lot of them would leave. If they give their DNA, fingerprints and photograph as they leave, they're going to leave, yeah? They're not going to want to do a 3 year prison sentence.
80% already have their photo taken, DNA taken, fingerprints. That already happens.
Well, a lot of the people who have absconded when they come in on the dinghies. Yeah,
but we've only had, for instance, there was 227 that absconded between September 2021 and January this year. 227. When you put that into figures, if you add in all over since like 2016, we're probably looking at about 3,000, give or take, that have absconded, because they don't need to abscond because they're having everything on a plate and they can still live their dodgy lifestyles whilst they're standing in these hotels and or whatever reasons. Putting them in prison doesn't really solve the problem. I get where you're coming from, but to me, it doesn't solve the problem at all. It just creates a bigger problem.
But you're never going to stop illegal immigrants. Once we've left the Refugee Convention and people can't turn up and claim asylum, you're not going to stop them coming unless there's a penalty for coming. There should be, to be honest with you, I think there should be a 5-year prison sentence to make sure they never try it again. Because, like I said,
that's where we disagree on this. Because the minute you put them in prison, you've given legitimacy. You're saying they deserve to be here and they're going to be punished under our laws. They're going to be treated as one of our own and put into our prisons. That's not what should be happening. They should be deported straight away. That's an incentive. Like, for instance, say you come over on a boat, right, and you manage to make it to the UK. You don't, just to use an example, they don't get picked up by the border force. They make it here, right, and they land on our beaches. The first thing they should be done is dragged into an immigration van, put onto a ferry, and taken back to whatever country, to France, or if they can't go back to France, whatever country they come from, and simple as that, straight away. And then when any that other try to come back after that, you just push them back at sea. If the pushing back at sea doesn't work, then you fly them back out of the country and you get even tougher. But the thing is, pushing back at sea will stop 95% of these crossings overnight. Overnight,
if
it would.
if we left the refugee conventions, I agree with that. Yeah, we should do that. However, if you have people trying to break into your country and you're just going to tell them, "Oh, get back over there," they're just going to, if they really want to get in, they'll try another way, and they're going to keep doing it until they don't get caught.
They're going to do that no matter what. All that's going to happen, right, with what your solution of prison is, more people are going to abscond.
How are they going to abscond?
Because you've got to go and round them up and put them in prison. The minute they find out you've put 1,000 of them in prison, that's it. The rest have disappeared just like that. You ain't catching them.
Well, the idea is if you catch someone illegally trying to enter, then they get the 3-year prison sentence rather than of them not being penalised. But being deported is not a penalty. You're just
100%. The only thing they want when they come to this country is to come to this country and reap the rewards of this country, right? So deporting them and not letting anyone else come in is the ultimate solution.
Deporting them is enforcing your borders. That's all that's doing. You're not punishing anyone by deporting them.
Don't need to punish them. We just want them gone.
I think you do, because otherwise they're never going to stop coming. That's my opinion. But let's move on.
Yeah, go on.
So the Refugee Conventions, the ECHR and the United Nations Human Rights Convention. So these people at Dover, they're using the Refugee Conventions to get in, and then they use the ECHR and the UN Human Rights Convention in order to stop getting deported. That's what they're using. Now, Nigel Farage keeps saying, "Oh, if we leave the ECHR, it's all going to be solved, right?" And everything.
ECHR is a distraction. That those flights got blocked. For instance, you take the Rwanda flight, for instance, right? If you look at the flight, 95% of them, I'd say even about 98% of them, right, were blocked by us listening to these conventions, and then the ECHR stepped in and stopped 7 of them. So campaigning to leave the ECHR is just another non-policy. I don't see any legitimacy in any of these international treaties, no matter what one they throw in your face. To me, they don't exist. To me, we don't obey them, and they don't stand anywhere in UK law. They're not statute. They have no standing whatsoever. It's all down to interpretation, and whether people like to admit it or not, we can interpret it however we want. And if we want to interpret it as Mickey Mouse law and it doesn't exist, that's exactly what we can do. That's what they do in Eastern Europe. That's what they do in Asia, and we could do it here just like that. But Steve, that's where I stand on that, and I'll never buckle on it.
Steve, if you and me was in government, that's what we would do, obviously. But we're not. So it's like saying, "Oh, we're just going to ignore
but that's
NATO."
the thing. We're not in government, so we won't be able to change our position.
NATO. We're a NATO member. You can't get away from it. It's the same as the UN.
Yeah, but NATO is completely different to these international conventions. NATO is a military alliance. It's nothing to do with the Refugee Convention.
UN's arguably even worse because there is international war crimes courts. You know.
And what happened before Russia went to war with Ukraine? They left it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to leave it as well. I want to leave
it. So you can leave it just like that. You can disregard it if you want.
We can't, because we're not in power, Steve. We need to get.
But this is my point. We won't be able to get rid of those conventions, whether you campaign for it to be scrapped or to ignore them. It won't make a difference because we're not in power, like you say.
People said we'd never get out of the EU, and we got out of the EU. Well,
but we ain't even out of the EU yet.
I know, but we're nearly out of it.
Nearly out of it, yeah. It's like 7 years down the line.
Look, right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't. I get where you're coming from, but in my opinion, it doesn't work.
Well, we're nearly out of the EU, right? It's coming to a crunch. The protocol and the Tory government have basically got to say we're going to leave the ECHR and we're going to drop the protocol. And then the EU will probably retaliate and stop the trade deal, what they agree, and we go to WTF. That's on the horizon, in my opinion. That's what's going to happen. And then we've got to concentrate on getting out of the UN, in my opinion. You know, it's not only the Refugee Convention, there's the Migration Pact as well. Is it the 20?
Yeah, which is another thing. It comes back to international treaties that you can disregard. Obviously, we're all talking about pipe dreams because none of this is reality is going to happen unless we're in power. Right. And to get us in power is basically mission impossible.
Myself and John Lawrence have started this party because we know in the next 2 years things are going to happen in this country. We are about 2 years behind. I've said this loads of times before. We're 2 years behind Europe. You got Marine Le Pen in France, just won 89 seats in the Parliament. Yeah, that's unheard of. And then you got Giorgia Meloni. I don't know if you've heard about her in Italy. she's predicted to be elected on the 25th of September. Now, she's the leader of the Brothers of Italy party, and they are a serious nationalist party. And the reason we're 2 years behind is because we was all concentrating on Brexit and getting Brexit. So things are changing. Like the globalists are either going to go into a full-on lockdown dictatorship and take all our rights away, which they have really already, but it's going to get even worse. Or if they allow it to continue, like what they call democracy, what we're experiencing now, I think there's something's going to happen in the next 2 years. I'll guarantee it. Might not be my party. Hopefully we'll win a few local seats and go from there, see how it goes.
Yeah, I do hope you get some seats in that, 100%.
And it could be a number of parties. It could be, one of the Farage parties, Reform, Heritage.
If we've got any chance, it would be someone like Farage. Like whether we like it or not, and everyone's got their opinion on Farage. He's the only person who's got any chance of disrupting this government the slightest little bit. And I know you people think he's controlled opposition, or they think whatever you want to think. The reality is he's the only person that normies will get behind that isn't Tory or Labour.
Right. Well,
that's the reality of the situation, whether we like it or not.
I'm not a fan of him. The reason I'm not a fan of him is anti-white, he's pro-refugee, and he's pro-permanent settlement and immigration. Can't he see what's going on in this country at Dover, that we don't need any more refugees?
Farage is the baby step for normal. He's the baby step for normies. That's what you've got to think. You get Farage in, and then people are more exposed to further, more nationalist ideas because it's more socially acceptable. It's not going to happen overnight. We have to take baby steps to get to where we want to be, unfortunately.
Yeah, but Steve, things are so bad at Dover. The census, they're not releasing the figures.
We're saying we're down at Eurotunnel. I asked them how many came over in the Eurotunnel. They told me it's not in the public interest.
Right. Well, I'm just surprised because you know what I mean. You got some hardline views on this situation, and now you're saying like Farage is the man, and he's not.
I'm not saying he's the man. I'm saying he's a baby step towards more nationalist views. That's what I'm saying. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's what people have to accept.
But the people who would have stopped the boats at Dover are the BNP, and Farage is most.
Yeah, but BNP's dead and buried. It's never coming back.
Yeah, and that's because Farage, that's his most proudest moment in politics. He's down at Dover and he's looking over the channel. He's going, look at these boats. This is terrible. Well, he was the one who destroyed the only party who would have stopped it. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, we all want it stopped. Steve wants it all stopped. I want it all stopped. We're just having a debate on how we deliver it.
Yeah, no, I know you stand. I know you want it stopped. 100%. I don't doubt that. 100%.
And I'm hoping to come down to the docks with you in the next couple of weeks, which would be brilliant. I would really enjoy that. And, and you never know in the future. Like, I said to you before, even if you stand as an independent, I will come down and help you and knock on doors for you. And,
yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And, hopefully you change your mind, you're going to stand. And but I understand you've got a family and all that. And I understand that.
Yeah, I've got too much going on to bother with all the standing at the moment.
Yeah, I understand that. But just a shout out to all the people watching, please get involved and stand in local elections. Come and join our party if you want to, and we'll help you do that. If you don't want to join our party, go and join another party. There's the British Democrats. They're the only other party that I respect who have got similar policies to ours. So please, if you feel passionately about all this, it's nothing to be scared of. They're not shooting rocket launchers at us. We're just knocking on doors and saying, would you vote for us? That's all we're doing. And, because we need people to stand up. Like I said, in the next 2 years, it is going to happen in this country. I'm telling you, nationalism's going to rise. I just know it. And
yeah, but the thing is, it will rise, but it's got to be baby steps. Otherwise, people will just disregard it.
Well, our party has got very sensible and realistic policies. And like people like Farage and that, I just could never get. Well, put it this way, Steve, we're all banned from joining their parties, and they've divided the right. That's the reality. They have divided the right, and it's a disgrace, really, because there's so many good people. All they were trying to do is like all our old National Front people, old BNP people, Britain First people, even For Britain people, they've banned.
No, I used to be in For Britain.
Well, you're banned from David Curtin's party then.
No, he won't ban me. He likes me.
Anyway, so yeah, look, thanks for watching, everyone. Is there anything you want to finish on, Steve?
Nah, thanks for having me on, Matt. Appreciate it.
I mean, have I tried to change your mind a little bit, or are you going to carry on just calling them illegals coming across?
No, I don't think. No disrespect, but I don't think anyone will change my mind on this. I know I've got my views on it, and I'll stand by it 100%.
But would you agree that the public needs to be informed that we need to leave the refugee conventions?
Well, that's where I disagree on you. It's good at informing them about the refugee convention, but in my opinion, you should inform them that we can disregard it and it doesn't even exist.
Yeah, only if we get in power.
Yeah, that's the thing. It'd be the same with leaving the refugee convention. You won't get out of it unless you get into power.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same. It doesn't matter what route you take. It's the same outcome. We ain't getting anywhere close.
But I think our main challenge as a nation is we need to re-educate people that giving passports to people who are not British is wrong.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Anyone who's not British, does not have a British passport, they shouldn't even be able to touch them.
And it's basically destroyed our country. That is what has happened. And we don't even know the figures yet from the census when they're going to
We ain't gonna know it. They ain't gonna tell us the full scope of it.
I didn't fill it in. I refused because I thought if I fill it in, they're just going to use it to persecute white people. That's what they're going to use the information for, to discriminate against us, you know. But listen, thanks for everyone listening and watching, and thanks a lot, Steve Laws, top man from Dover Docks. Shout out to Chris Johnson, active patriot, little veteran, and keep that information coming. Educating
nice one, mate.
All the numbers and all that, and I'll speak to you soon, Steve.
Yeah, no worries, mate. You take care, all right?
Cheers, mate.
See ya.
See ya.